You're holding a smartphone right now, or maybe you're sitting in a climate-controlled room with fresh water 10 steps away and food in your refrigerator. Your ancestors would think you're living in a paradise they couldn't even imagine. But here's what's strange. If you swapped places with someone from 50,000 years ago, they'd figure out your world in days. You wouldn't last a week in theirs. Ancient human survival wasn't one skill. It was 7 distinct levels of mastery, each building on the last, each taking generations to develop. Miss one level, and you die. Master all 7, and you become the apex predator on a planet that's actively trying to kill you. Let's start at the bottom. Level 1 is stone, not just picking up a rock, knowing which rocks can be shaped, which ones shatter the right way, which ones hold an edge. Around 2.6 million years ago in Gona, Ethiopia, someone figured out that if you hit one specific type of stone with another at just the right angle, it flakes off in razor-sharp pieces. We call these older one tools. You're thinking that sounds simple. It's not. Try it. Most people can't produce a functional cutting edge even after hours of practice. Your ancestors had to understand geology, force vectors, and material properties without any of those words existing. They had to recognize flint, chert, obsidian, and quartzite in raw form across thousands of miles of terrain. Here's what those sharp flakes did. They turned a stripped carcass into calories. When lions finished with a kill, and hyenas cracked the smaller bones, your ancestors approached with their stone tools. They smashed open the thick leg bones that nothing else could break and scooped out the marrow inside. Grey, fatty, calorie-dense marrow that kept them alive. But stone tools did something else. Something neuroscientists only recently understood. The process of making them, of planning the strikes and reading the stone, activated the same brain regions we use for language. Better tools didn't just mean more food, they meant bigger brains, which meant better tools. The feedback loop that created everything you are started with someone learning to break rocks correctly. Level 2 changed everything. Fire. For millions of years, humans used fire when they found it. Lightning strikes, volcanic activity, spontaneous combustion in dry grass. They'd carry embers wrapped in leaves, keep them alive for days, pass them from camp to camp like the most valuable possession in existence. Because it was. Then, someone in what's now Barnum, England, roughly 400,000 years ago, did something revolutionary. They brought pyrite from the coast, miles away, specifically to make fire, not to maintain it, to create it from nothing. Archaeologist Nick Ashton calls this site the earliest evidence of humans making fire anywhere in the world. Not Britain, not Europe. Anywhere. The ability to create fire on demand made humans more adaptable than any species that had ever existed. You could move into environments that would kill you otherwise. Northern Europe, high altitudes, places where the sun disappeared for months. But the real transformation happened after dark. Fire created a 30-foot circle of safety. Outside that circle, leopards and hyenas waited. Inside, humans could do something no other animal could. They could extend the day. Before fire, useful time ended at sunset. After fire, you had 2 to 4 extra hours every single night. Those hours built civilization. Around fires, humans told stories, they taught skills, they planned hunts that wouldn't happen for days. Children learned from elders. Knowledge accumulated across generations instead of dying with each person. Fire didn't just keep you warm, it made you human. Level 3 is where survival becomes craftsmanship. When Ötzi the Iceman was found frozen in the Austrian Alps, he was wearing a bearskin sole on his shoes and deerskin uppers. His cloak was woven grass, waterproof, doubling as a sleeping mat. Every material chosen for specific properties. Every stitch placed with intention. This wasn't someone throwing on whatever was available. This was engineering. To create what Ötzi wore, you need to master an entire chain of technologies, track and kill the right animals, butcher them properly to preserve the hide, tan the leather so it doesn't rot, a process involving brains, urine, or tree bark that takes days. Identify plant fibers that can be woven. Create cordage strong enough to sew but fine enough to thread. Design patterns that account for human movement and environmental conditions. Most modern hunters couldn't tan a hide if their life depended on it. For your ancestors, it did. Level 4 is where individual skills become collective knowledge. Your ancestors didn't survive alone. They moved in bands of 20 to 30 people, and every member contributed to the group's survival. This wasn't optional cooperation. This was the only way humans could exist. When someone killed a deer, the entire band ate. When someone found a grove of nut trees, everyone knew where it was. When an elder learned which mushrooms caused death and which ones sustained life, that information spread through the group and passed to children who would pass it to their children. Knowledge accumulated across generations instead of resetting with every death. But here's what made human groups different from every other primate band. We could teach complex skills that took years to master. A young person learning to knap stone tools needed thousands of hours of practice. Someone had to feed them during that time. Someone had to protect them while they learned. The group invested in individuals who wouldn't contribute fully for years, banking on future returns. This is why language probably emerged, not for casual conversation, for instruction, for passing down techniques that couldn't be learned through observation alone. How to find water in a drought, which plants cure infection, when to harvest roots before they turn toxic. These details meant survival or death, and they required precise communication. Level 5 introduces something most people never consider: preservation. Your ancestors couldn't refrigerate meat. They couldn't seal food in plastic, but they figured out how to make calories last beyond the moment of harvest. Drying started around 12,000 BC in the Middle East. Thin strips of meat or fish laid on hot rocks under the sun. The water evaporates. Bacteria can't grow. Food that would rot in 3 days now lasts 3 months. Salt accelerated this process through osmosis, pulling moisture out faster while creating an environment hostile to microorganisms. Coastal communities had unlimited access to salt. Inland groups traveled days to acquire it. Smoking did something else entirely. The phenols and acids in wood smoke didn't just dry meat, they chemically altered it. Smoked fish could last through entire winters. Smoked meat could be carried on long migrations without spoiling. This single technique transformed seasonal abundance into year-round security. But the most ingenious method was fermentation, controlled rot. Your ancestors discovered that certain bacteria, when given the right conditions, would break down food in ways that made it last longer and remain safe to eat. This is where every fermented food you consume today originated. Cheese, yogurt, pickles, sauerkraut, all of them are preservation techniques that predate written history. Level 6 is the one almost everyone forgets. Water. You'll die of dehydration faster than starvation. 3 days without water and your organs start failing. Finding clean water was a daily challenge that determined where groups could travel and how long they could stay. Your ancestors learned to read landscapes for water sources. Certain plants only grow near groundwater. Animal tracks converge at watering holes. Birds fly toward water at dawn. Insects swarm near moisture. These weren't superstitions. They were empirical observations refined over thousands of generations. But finding water wasn't enough. Most natural water contains parasites, bacteria, or toxins that will kill you slowly. Boiling solved this problem, but boiling requires a container that won't burn. Before pottery, humans used rock boiling. Heat stones in a fire for 45 minutes. Drop them into a bark or hide container filled with water. The thermal mass transfer brings the water to temperatures that kill pathogens. Ingenious, effective, completely forgotten by modern civilization. Level 7 is the foundation everything else rests on: community. Every skill we've discussed requires time to learn and practice. Time you don't have if you're constantly searching for food or fleeing predators. Bands succeeded because they distributed labor. Some people were better hunters. Others excelled at plant identification. Some had steady hands for tool making. Others were better at reading weather patterns. The group didn't need every person to master every skill. They needed specialists who could rely on each other. This interdependence created something unprecedented in nature: cultural evolution that moved faster than biological evolution. Information could spread horizontally across communities and vertically across generations. A technique developed in one region could reach another through trade and migration. Improvements built on previous improvements. Innovation accelerated because knowledge didn't die with individuals. That acceleration is why you're here reading this instead of cracking open bones for marrow. Every survival skill your ancestors mastered became the foundation for the next level, and the next, until survival itself became so efficient that humans had time for everything else. Art, philosophy, science, civilization, all of it traces back to someone figuring out how to stay alive one more day. The distance between you and your ancestors isn't measured in years, it's measured in capability. They could read a landscape like you read a text message. They could track an animal across miles of terrain by interpreting bent grass and disturbed soil. They could identify hundreds of plant species on sight and know which ones would feed them and which ones would kill them. You can order food from your phone. This isn't about romanticizing the past or pretending their lives were better. They weren't. Most of them died young. Many died violently. Starvation was a constant threat, but they possessed a depth of environmental literacy that's almost extinct now. They understood their world at a level we can barely comprehend because their survival depended on it every single day. We traded those skills for something else. Specialization, civilization, the ability to pursue knowledge that has nothing to do with immediate survival. That trade was worth it. But the cost was real. Somewhere in your DNA, all 7 levels still exist. The pattern recognition that helped your ancestors read stone, the social instincts that built communities around fires, the spatial reasoning that found water in drought. All of it is still there, dormant, waiting for conditions that will probably never come again. You live in the world those skills built. They died so you could forget how they survived.